Hey, what's new and exciting? It's Kevin O'Shaughnessy here, and some people recently have been asking me about my practice routine, so here it is. First thing I do want to point out is that practicing really isn't fun, okay? You kind of want to wrap your head around that right away. Practicing is the work that we do to develop the skills so that we can have fun, right? Playing through a song is fun, playing with a band is fun, but practicing is work. It can be remarkably enjoyable, it can be satisfying, it can be rewarding, okay? But you have to go into it knowing that you're going to be doing a bit of work to acquire skills. So with that, the first thing that I do in my routine is I pick a specific song to practice. Okay, right now I'm actually working on Liberty by Steve Vai from his album Passion and Warfare. That's going to set up the framework for how I do everything else in my routine. Now my routine is broken up into 4 specific sections, okay? So I basically spend about 25% of my time on each section. Section 1 is a warm-up. Section 2 is a technical drill. Section 3 is the song that I want to develop. And Section 4 could be improvising, could be noodling around on songs that I already know how to play, anything else that I can do to sort of cool down. So let's talk about the warm-up. The warm-up is probably the most important part of my practice routine. And the first thing that I'll do is a simple walking exercise. You're probably familiar with it. It goes something like this. So I'll do that routine all up the neck and back down again, and I probably won't go much faster than that. I'm trying to accomplish a few different things, and I need a slow pace in order to do it. Number 1, I'm asking, is my synchronization good? Okay? Are my fingers on my fretting hand and the pick hitting the string at the same time? Am I getting a good, clear sound out of every note on every finger? Okay, sometimes some fingers might be weaker than others. I'll need to develop those. I want to make sure there's no buzzing. I want to make sure that the note doesn't dampen too early. The next thing I'll check in with is my level of tension in different parts of my body. Am I feeling tension in my wrist or in my forearms, my shoulders or in my low back? Throughout the course of the exercise, I'm going to try to make adjustments so that I start to feel comfortable and I start to get a good sound out of the guitar. The next part of my warm-up is scale exercises. And this is why I like to have a particular song in mind before I start my warm-up, because I'm going to practice the scales that are relevant to that song. So in the case of Liberty, that song is in the key of E major, so I'm going to practice the E major scale. So one of the first things I'll do is simply walk the scale up and down like that. I might practice some sequences within the scale, I might practice modes of the scale, but in addition to the technical difficulties that I'm going to be working to overcome, I'm also going to begin saturating my ear with the sound of that tonality, in this case E major. So that's a really important part. I need to know instantaneously if I'm hitting a wrong note. And if I have the notes of the scale firmly entrenched in my brain, that's going to be a lot easier to do. The last part of my warm-up, similar to working the scales, is working the arpeggios of a given key. So an arpeggio is simply a chord that is played one note at a time instead of all together. And we might think of, if you're a hard rock or heavy metal player, you might think of sweeping arpeggios, but it doesn't have to be anything that complicated. If the songs that you're working on involve open chords, you can arpeggiate those as well. For example, if I take an E major chord, if I play all the notes together, I'm strumming a chord. If I take the notes and I break them up and I do them one at a time, I'm arpeggiating the chord. And this again firmly entrenches the tonality in your mind, okay? And it also gives us that relationship that, we tend to think of chords and scales as being very separate, but they're not. A scale is simply notes aligned one after another, played one at a time. Chords are collections of notes that are played at the same time, so they're very much related, even though we tend to deal with them separately. So I can do arpeggios like this, I could do bar chord arpeggios, I could do triad arpeggios. These are all different ways that I can play the chords of the scale. I can do the arpeggios within that key. So in E major, I'd work on the E arpeggio, the F sharp minor, G sharp minor, A, B, C sharp minor, D sharp diminished, and then I'm back to E again. The second part of my practice routine is a technical drill or an etude of some sort. Now, like I said, I'm working on a Steve Vai tune, so there is absolutely no shortage of technical drills in any one of his tunes. So you might take a lick that's in that song, you might take a concept, you might build an exercise around it, you might practice particular techniques like sweep picking. There's a lot of double stop unison bends in Liberty, so that's something that I spend a lot of time practicing, trying to make sure that both notes are perfectly in tune. Anything that you can think of. You could take this opportunity to work with effects. Let's say you want to develop your wah pedal technique. And the synchronization between your foot and the phrases that you're playing. It's a perfect time to do that sort of thing. So that would be a technical exercise. But even if you've got a song like Liberty that's got a lot of different technical things going on, the idea is to pick one and focus on it. Remember, you're supposed to be practicing about 5 or 6 days a week, so you pick a technical drill each day and you'll begin to elevate all of your technical skills. The third part is the song itself. You can work on this in a number of different ways. You could work phrase by phrase, you could work section by section. I take a lot of these, particularly songs by virtuosos like Steve Vai and Joe Satriani, I really take the opportunity to study them. I'm looking for aspects of their technique that I might incorporate into my own playing and my own composition. So I'm going to take probably months to learn this song and to really dig into it for very specific ideas. This is also a time where I will work on my own songs. Okay, I write my own music. You can find many of my songs up here on this YouTube channel, and especially when I'm getting ready to record, I need to practice them and make sure that I'm going to play them well at the time of recording. So this is a good time during my routine to practice that. The last part in my routine is sort of what I call a cooling down period. This is where I'll take songs that I already know how to play, or I will take a chord progression that I might improvise over if I didn't use improvisation as, say, my technical development for the day. I might use improvisation to cool down at the end of my practice session. But the idea is to now just sort of let loose and have a little fun. Try not to focus as much on your technique. Try to let yourself just play. That way you can see how well your practicing is paying off. Because at the end of the day, when we're practicing, or rather when we're playing our songs, you're playing in a band or you're playing along with your favorite recordings, you're playing in front of some people, you don't want to have to think about the technique. You want to be able to have it ready to use at a moment's notice. Just like the way we talk. You don't script out your conversations with your friends, you just know the vocabulary and the grammar well enough that you can just come up with sentences at will. That comes from many, many, many years of working with the language and practicing every single day. We can do the same thing on the guitar or any other instrument, but we've got to put in the time to really get to know the vocabulary, the grammar, the alphabet even, the syntax of music and of the style of music that you're playing. So there's a lot involved, and this is a good time, I find, to really just let loose, have a little fun with it, see what techniques are sticking, see which ones aren't. The techniques that aren't sticking, a lot of times that's what I will put down in my notes. I'll say, okay, well, hey, look, this legato thing really wasn't working out. That's what's going to be my technical etude tomorrow. Okay, one of the things I always tell my students is love your mistakes. Really develop a friendship with your mistakes, because your mistakes will always tell you what you need to practice. You make a note of it, you practice it the next day, and the next thing you know, that mistake goes away. All of your technique gets better, all of your playing overall gets better, and that's when you start to have a lot more fun. So I hope you found that useful. If you have any questions, hit me up in the comments. I'd be more than happy to answer them. If you did find that entertaining and useful, please subscribe and hit the notifications bell so you get a heads up whenever I post new content. Until then, I'm Kevin O'Shaughnessy, and I'll see you in the next video.